Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the Managing Director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. As the title of this video suggests, we're discussing so-called Carousel, the U.S. tourist visa Carousel, if you will. What are we talking about here? I actually saw this when I was reading a few. I'd never heard it called this, but it's a pretty good name for a phenomenon. What are we talking about? Okay, U.S. tourist visas, a B1, B2 visa to the United States. These are generally multi-entry visas issued usually these days with a 10-year validity, although that's not mandatory. The consular officers at a U.S. embassy or consulate can decide how long they want the visa sticker to last for, so it's sort of up to them. In any event, you know, you've got your tourist visa. It's designed for tourism purposes or short, it's business and tourism, however you want to look at it, but short trips to the United States, very much a non-immigrant visa, truly a tourist visa. So what is this Carousel we're talking about? Well, one of the, if you will, attributes of the U.S. tourist visa is it is multi-entry, and in theory, it's supposed to grant status for the duration that one needs it for. So in theory, if you had the quietest Customs and Border Protection checkpoint in America, where the person was literally looking at the documentation in detail of every single person passing through that particular border checkpoint, it's very possible, and I remember a time when they would do this more frequently, although it wasn't like all the time. They would look at the documentation, they would say, how long do you want to be in the United States? Well, I'm planning to be here for a 3-week trip. Okay, I'll give you 4 weeks. Boom, that's it. And because the thinking is, okay, you're going to be here for the duration you need to be here, we're not going to give you any more time than that. Now, due to efficiency issues, the officers at U.S. Customs and Border Protection, especially these days, routinely will just tick over the next day on their stamp, and they'll grant the max amount of time. They'll grant 6 months generally because they just tick over the next day on their stamp. They don't want to have to reset their stamp every time they admit someone to the United States. That's just not something they particularly want to do. So for efficiency purposes, they just keep the next day rolls over every midnight on their stamp, their entry stamp to the United States, and they tick it over by 1 day and give 6 months to the next day of lawful status in the United States. Now, the issue with this is if people use that sort of correctly, and okay, I need to be in America for 3 weeks, I got 6 months stamp, but I only used it for 3 weeks and I left, no big deal. But this Carousel comes about when people try to come into the United States, stay for 6 months, leave for a week, return and get another 6 months. That can turn into a real problem when one is dealing with trying to enter and exit the USA. In fact, and this is where deportation may come up, there may be a determination made by US CBP that the person trying to enter the United States is what's called an intending immigrant without proper documentation. And then that person can be turned around. They can be given the option of voluntary departure, but they'll basically be told, you're not going to be admitted. We believe you're an intending immigrant without proper documentation. If allowed to voluntarily depart, it basically means, okay, you've lost your tourist visa, but there's no hardcore long-term implications for that. Now, if they opt, depending on the underlying circumstances, to put one through what's called expedited removal, which is essentially a deportation proceeding, albeit a truncated one, then under those circumstances, that person may be barred from re-entering the United States for 5 years, and even after that 5-year period might have really serious difficulties getting into the United States. Most notably, depending on the circumstances, there may be a finding of inadmissibility as well, and if that finding is made, that may not be able to overcome it even after 5 years without a waiver. So again, there can be substantial ramifications associated with the improper use of a U.S. tourist visa.